The first time Lieutenant Mark Talon saw her, he thought she was some hallucination, a trick of the neon-lit streets of New Avalon. Humanity's reach into the galaxy had brought them into contact with countless alien civilizations, but few were as striking as her. She stood on the observation balcony of the Zephyr Spire, the tallest building in the city, a figure bathed in soft, iridescent light that seemed to shift with her emotions. Her skin shimmered like molten silver, and her eyes, if one could even call them that, were deep pools of liquid opal. The galaxy knew her as Ly'sera, the Jewel of Andara. Entire planets had gone to war over the mere chance to gain her allegiance. She was born into privilege, beauty, and power, yet those qualities were shackled by expectation. Every empire, every galactic noble, had attempted to claim her as their own. She was untouchable, unbound, and utterly alone. Mark had been sent to New Avalon on what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic escort. A minor skirmish in the Outer Rim had left him restless, and he wasn't used to dealing with beings of such overwhelming influence. Most of the Andarans he'd met were polite, calculating, and imperious, speaking in tones that made a human soldier feel like a child. Ly'sera was different. She didn't speak at first. When she finally turned her gaze on him, it wasn't with curiosity, or with the cool detachment of someone accustomed to power, it was recognition, something deeper, startlingly personal. "You're human," she said softly, her voice a melodic chimera of musical notes that seemed to resonate in his chest. "Yes," Mark replied, cautious but steady. "And you are?" "Ly'sera." She smiled, and it was disarming, not because of its beauty but because of its simplicity. There was no veil of diplomacy, no calculating intent. Just acknowledgement. The weeks that followed were a blur of political maneuvering and social intrigue. Ly'sera was sought by every influential figure on New Avalon, yet she spent her time with Mark. Other aliens, diplomats, and warlords, some towering, some shimmering like living energy, tried to sway her attention. They offered worlds, fleets, and promises of dominion over galaxies, but she refused them all. Mark noticed it wasn't mere fascination with humans. Other species had humans in the same category as pets or novelties, but Ly'sera didn't treat him as a curiosity. She listened when he spoke, laughed at his bad jokes, and even sought his opinion on matters far beyond the understanding of ordinary humans. It wasn't long before the Council of Andara grew concerned. They sent envoys, then ambassadors, and finally emissaries of war. "You can't stay here," Ly'sera said one evening, her hand brushing lightly against his arm as they overlooked the city's endless lights. "They will force me to leave, to choose someone else. I can't. I won't let that happen." "Then we fight," Mark said, his military instincts kicking in. He had faced raiders, mercenaries, and alien war bands before, but nothing like this. They weren't just fighting for territory, they were fighting for her, for control over her destiny. The first confrontation came at dawn. The skies split open as hovercrafts carrying Andaran enforcers descended upon the Zephyr Spire. Ly'sera moved with Mark as they fought their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the tower. Her abilities were extraordinary. With a gesture, she could manipulate energy, bending it into shields or blasts that disarmed enemies without a single fatal strike. Mark, in turn, used his tactical knowledge to anticipate attacks and protect them both. "Why aren't they just using weapons on you?" Mark asked during a brief pause, dodging a volley of plasma projectiles. "They could," she said, eyes narrowing, "but I am not their pawn. They want me, but they fear what I might choose. And I've chosen you, human." The words hit him harder than any laser blast ever could. He felt a strange weight, a mixture of honor, disbelief, and fear. Chosen by a being that empires desired? It was unimaginable. Yet here she was, her trust and allegiance directed at him, a soldier from a distant planet with no title, no inherited power, and no right to claim her. As the battle escalated, they retreated to the top of the spire, the observation deck now a battlefield of light and shadow. Ly'sera summoned a shimmering barrier, a globe of protective energy, and Mark took position beside her, scanning the horizon. "They'll keep coming," Mark muttered, checking his weapon and surveying the attackers below. They always do, Ly'sera replied, her hand brushing against his. But we have something they don't, choice. They act out of desire, but we act out of will. The night wore on. They fought back to back, the enemies relentless but predictable. Mark's human instincts complemented Ly'sera's alien abilities perfectly, creating a synergy that neither side had anticipated. As dawn approached, the enforcers finally withdrew, realizing that force alone would not yield the Jewel of Andara. In the quiet that followed, Ly'sera turned to him, her iridescent eyes softening. "Everyone wants me," she said, her voice barely audible over the cooling city lights, "but I want you, human. I've chosen you, not for what you are, but for who you are." Mark felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of pride, love, and the sudden awareness of the dangerous path they had embarked upon. "Then we leave," he said. "We leave New Avalon, and we find somewhere no one can reach us." Ly'sera considered it for a moment, then smiled, a slow, radiant curve that made him forget the dangers outside the barrier. "I've never been afraid before," she admitted. "But with you, I feel safe. And free." The weeks that followed were a test of endurance and ingenuity. They traveled through hidden hyperspace routes, avoiding Andaran patrols and opportunistic bounty hunters. Ly'sera's powers proved invaluable, bending energy and matter to conceal their movements. Yet it wasn't just the physical threat that challenged them. They faced cultural misunderstandings, ethical dilemmas, and the simple strain of two beings from radically different worlds learning to live and fight together. One evening, as they rested on the barren surface of a remote moon, Mark finally allowed himself to ask the question that had been gnawing at him. "Why me? Out of all the people, the emperors, the generals, why choose a human soldier?" Ly'sera looked at the stars, her gaze distant yet piercing. "I've been raised to serve, to obey, to be wanted," she said softly. "But no one ever asked me what I wanted. You saw me. Not as a prize, not as a weapon, not as a symbol, but as someone who could choose. That made all the difference." Mark felt the weight of her words, the gravity of the trust she had placed in him. They were more than words, they were a bond forged in fire, blood, and choice. Months passed. The galaxy seemed vast enough that even the relentless Andaran forces could not follow. On a lush, isolated world, they built a home, blending human technology with Ly'sera's advanced energy manipulation. The humans who occasionally stumbled upon them saw only two travelers, a man and an alien woman, companions in the truest sense, their pasts shrouded in mystery. Ly'sera continued to grow, not just in power but in understanding of herself and the galaxy she had once feared. Mark taught her the nuances of humanity, trust, humor, resilience, and even mundane things like cooking or reading by the fire. She, in turn, shared knowledge of advanced sciences, art forms, and interstellar navigation. Together, they were a fusion of worlds, a testament to the potential of choice over conquest. Years later, as they watched twin suns set on the horizon, Mark glanced at her and realized that nothing in the galaxy could ever replicate what they had. "You know," he said quietly, "if anyone ever tried to take you again." Ly'sera interrupted him with a soft laugh, taking his hand. "They won't. Because I'm no longer someone to be taken. I'm someone who chooses. And I've chosen you, human. Always." Mark smiled, feeling a calm he had never known amidst the chaos of war and duty. "Then we're exactly where we're meant to be." The universe continued to turn, empires rose and fell, wars erupted and ended, but on this small, hidden world, a human soldier and the Jewel of Andara lived not as prey or prize, but as partners, friends, and something even deeper. And in a galaxy full of desire and ambition, they had found something rare, a choice freely made, a bond that no power could break. In the end, everyone wanted Ly'sera. Everyone desired the Jewel of Andara. But she had looked past titles, past beauty, past power, and in the heart of a human soldier, she found what she had been searching for all along, a companion, a partner, and the freedom to love. And that choice, above all, was hers.